Some of the very first videos I uploaded were sound design, like daily sound design projects. I think I ended up making like 100 presets for some of the main Ableton devices, and I kind of wanted to return to that format. These aren't going to be tutorials necessarily. They're simply going to be explorations of sound design. It's going to be kind of freeform. You're going to see how I work in real time with all the mistakes and turnarounds and errors along the way. But in order to make it just a little bit more interesting, we're going to incorporate some randomness into the mix in two different ways. The first way is with Brian Eno's Oblique Strategies. The original version of this comes as a deck of cards that have short, inspirational prompts on them. I think he intended them for writing music, but in this case, we're going to do it with sound design. And in following along with that tradition of drawing cards, I have these, which are blank playing cards with Ableton devices on them. I'm going to be making 2 sets of toms today. And whatever card I draw from here will be the device I use, and I will use the Oblique Strategies prompt to inform my sound design choices. I'll start by closing my eyes, try to be as fair as I can. I'll turn them this way, I guess. Close my eyes, spread them out, and choose one at random, which is Operator. That's great, because Operator is my favorite. And then the Oblique Strategies prompt, which I'm going to be using obliquestrategies.ca, which is a web version of Oblique Strategies. I'm going to cover my eyes, hit enter a bunch of times. I can see the screen is flashing until I feel like stopping. Go outside, shut the door. Okay, well, I'm not literally going to go outside and shut the door, but I'm going to use this to inform my first set of toms. So what could this mean? When I think of a door shutting, I think of a low-pass filter. I think of hearing something through the wall and hearing all those highs cut out. It's kind of like in a movie when people are standing outside of a club and all you hear is from inside the club is like or something like that. So I'm probably going to incorporate low-pass filters in some way, and since the door is shutting, I'll probably be sweeping the low-pass filter downwards. Okay, I think that's a great place to start. I get to use Operator, and it's worth mentioning that toms are tuned, but they're not always super precisely tuned. They're not necessarily tuned to like the key of the song, but they are tuned relative to each other. A common wisdom you'll hear sometimes is to tune them in fourths. I don't love this sound personally, especially in like an electronic music context. I want something a bit more stable sounding maybe. So what I think I'm going to do for this first set is create kind of a power chord where we have G, D, and G. Yeah, G, D, and G. So the lowest tom is kind of our root note of the power chord, and then we go up a fifth, and then we go up a fourth, and these two create an octave. And the classic way to start making some kind of membrane drum sound with a synth like Operator is to engage the pitch envelope. So you get that doom doom. I kind of want this to be longer. Okay, that's fine. I also want to make them shorter. Might even go further down. I wanted to incorporate the low-pass filter. I guess we need to add some harmonics before we can do something like that. You know what I actually might do is I'll use... I'll get some saturation going. Maybe I'll go kind of intense. Oh, that's kind of fun. Actually, what if I get confused by the wave shaper often. So I'll try to, ooh, that's fun. Like I said, I want to incorporate a low pass filter, but I want to use the envelope. We're creating like a negative relationship between the frequency cutoff and the volume of the incoming sound. Maybe the other way is the way to go. Maybe something like. Maybe I want the attack time to be short because I want the door to be closing. There we go. Okay. Give it a bit more distortion again. Okay, I might mess with the actual synth itself. Maybe I'll do a fixed frequency for the carrier oscillator. No, the modulating oscillator. Ah! You know, another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pan these. So I'll probably use just a utility device. This will go at the very end of my chain because on a physical drum kit, the toms are spaced across the stereo imaging field, right? Now on a real drum kit, you'd probably have like one panned center and then have them panned, I guess, in relation to the audience to the left. But because we're in electronic music world and we can take some liberties with how we pan this, I'm going to be doing left, center, and then right. Probably not hard panning, but you'll see. Cool. I think that's going to add a lot. These are sounding a little too synthy. They're almost like too tuned. So I might actually get one of these CC control devices. And I want to create a very slight downward pitch bend. Duplicate that. Okay, I think I want to incorporate like a little bit of delay. I want to create like a very, very slight, very subtle kind of ping-pongy texture. So something, yeah, not quite like that. Although, maybe. It is a little bit messing with the perception of the panning. Maybe I'll do like some crazy mod thing. I'll kind of relegate the ping-pongy stuff to the higher frequencies. Although, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, the full prompt was go outside, shut the door. And I did the shut the door part, which is the low pass filter. I didn't do the go outside part. So I'm tempted to incorporate something that maybe was recorded outside. I think I got an idea. I think I'm going to group operator there, and then I have a folder of sounds I've recorded, and I specifically want to use this one here. This is a field recording of I-5 in Seattle. Like 2 blocks from where I live is the Denny I-5 freeway overpass. And I stood there with my handy recorder, and I just recorded passing traffic. As far as I know, that's the only recording I have that is of something outside. So let's try that. I'm basically going to use this as like a noise texture. So I'll high pass it. There we go. So for reference, if I turn all this off, this is the recording of I-5. And it's very clearly being repitched. So I'm going to switch to sampler, and then I'm going to turn the scale here to 0, which ensures that it's not repitched as different notes are playing. Okay, maybe I'll find something just a little bit more interesting. Ooh, there we go. kind of like a passing motorcycle or something. Make it kind of short and percussive. Okay. Noise like this, especially when it's being run through a distortion, is a really, really great way to add a lot of complex texture to an otherwise simple sound. So let's hear what it all sounds like together. Oop, sorry. I want to give it... I'm going to make this just a little bit more interesting. I'm going to mod the filter kind of a wacky way. There we go. That's fun. Or maybe not the filter, maybe the volume instead. There we go. And turn up the volume. And I'll make it shorter too. So maybe just 1 second. Actually, I'll do a little bit of drum bus processing. And EQing. Because that first tom is quite piercing. You know, toms tend to exist in this kind of low mid between 1K and 1,000. Or sorry, 1K and 100. And I want it to be more of the fundamental that's present there rather than all those crazy harmonics. And I'm also going to make the panning just a little bit more extreme. There we go. That's better. And last thing, I'm just going to do a kind of finishing touches of light compression, limiting, and clipping. Okay, that's the final sound. On second thought, I want to, again, make this pitch bend just a bit more extreme. Maybe even go like 35. Woo! Minus 35 is what I meant. There we go. That's much better. When I'm making toms, I like to keep them all in one audio file. That way I don't have to go hunting through my folders for, you know, the individual tom samples that match or that are part of a set. It just makes finding these sounds later a lot easier. Okay, for the second set, first I'm going to have some tea. Same process as before, pick an instrument at random. I'm actually going to remove operator for this one, so I'm not using the same device twice. Close my eyes. Mix. Let's go with this one. Meld. Not my favorite Ableton device, but that's why we do stuff like this. So we are pushed to do things we don't necessarily want to do. And then back to Oblique strategies. It works. Okay, close my eyes. Hit enter a bunch of times. Stop. What do we got? Work at a different speed. Now, I want to interpret these a bit more poetically rather than literally. You know, I don't want to literally be like working super fast or super slow. What's coming to mind immediately is kind of the length of the sounds and how frequently they occur. It could also be like the speed at which the different frequencies of the toms change. So before we were kind of creating a power chord with our toms, but what if we did something where the intervals between the toms were a bit shorter, or I mean, you know, closer together. So I'm imagining for this creating a set of like more toms, maybe like 5, and having the intervals between those toms be quite close together. So the speed at which we're moving between the different pitches on the toms is different. I know that's kind of a loose interpretation of this prompt, but I think that's the point of it, right? Back into live. I'm supposed to use meld, right? Yeah. So let's get meld. So maybe what I'll do is like a pentatonic scale. So we're using, smaller intervals, but they're not so close together that it kind of reads like a melody almost, or like, running like a diatonic scale, like running the major scale or something like that. I think a pentatonic scale would be a nice balance. Yeah, you can even see in the spectrum here, despite the fact that we have 6 toms here, they're all pretty close together. What do we have as far as our oscillator options or sound generators? I'm kind of interested in these swarm sounds. I think that might be a bit too much. The swarm type of sound, especially with all that motion in it, it helps lose the kind of pitchiness of the sound. And given that this is a drum, that may work to our advantage. Let's see how it sounds when we incorporate one of those falling pitch envelopes. Oh, and can I really not just map that to the pitch? I guess not. Okay, that's frustrating, I guess. Let me use pitch bend automation here to accomplish that. And then for the amp envelope, no, I don't like that. What about like a noise loop or a squelch? That helps with the tomminess, that sub sound. Pitch bend a little tighter, duplicate it across all the notes. Maybe make the pitch bend, more like an octave, maybe 2 octaves. Okay, so make it shorter. Okay, I'm actually gonna spread these notes out just a bit more. I think I'll actually use a shifter here to pitch them up an octave. Ooh, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now I want to incorporate a bit more of Meld's capabilities, because so far this is just kind of a falling sine wave through a shifter device. So what if I did some redux? I like that. That incorporates like a little bit of noise into the signal. Maybe in the shifter device, create a little bit of pitch wobble. We're getting somewhere. So how can I incorporate this second oscillator in here? Let's see what extra tone has to offer. Nope, don't like that. Crackle. That's kind of interesting. I do want that quieter though. Maybe I'll even just low pass it. So it's still there, but it's kind of in the background. That's the amp envelope of that second oscillator. Okay, so Meld's mod matrix is really where things, get interesting for it. So I want to do just a little bit in here before I start adding effects processing. I'm curious about modulating some of these oscillator macros with LFOs. What if I just want to hear that? Maybe one of the filter macros instead. Oh, I'm modulating or I'm messing with the wrong LFO. There we go. Maybe I'll do something synced. Change the pitch of this. Maybe I'll take this down an octave. Maybe not. What about this up an octave? Okay, that's interesting. Okay. And then with the shifter device. Okay. What I might do is take the volume of oscillator A down. Yeah, because right now it seems like the B oscillator is actually the one that's kind of carrying it. Okay, so now I think I want to add some like distortion. Maybe I'll go for like an overdrive. Maybe that's it. Maybe I don't want to touch it. And yet, here I go touching it. Okay, I'm just gonna, that's it. That's good. Take it down a little. There we go. Actually want to, I think I'll just use the auto pan rather than kind of doing discrete panning positions. I'll just make it nice and slow. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. 70, I like my nice round numbers. I think I wanted like a phaser or something. Maybe, ooh, hang on. I got a device for this. I have kind of my own hacky version of disperser, which I made in an attempt to understand all pass filters, and I don't really think I succeeded. I'm still very confused by them. You know what I'm kind of feeling, and I'm not really sure why, is a vowel filter with some wacky filter movement. I don't want the frequency of the filter to move around. I kind of just want like the formants to move. Something like... Yeah. Maybe take the depth down a little bit. Maybe I'll even do a second LFO at a related but different rate. Wasn't I supposed to be making a tom? A very loose interpretation of what a tom is supposed to be, but I'm going with it. And then a little bit of drum bus processing. And then my little compressor, limiter, clipper thingy. Okay. I think that's the sound. It's odd, but, you know, what's the point of doing sound design if we're not going to make sounds that are a little bit odd? Okay, that is the toms I made in this particular sound design diary type video. This is something I'm going to be doing more of. I don't have a strict schedule. I'm not doing like daily uploads or weekly uploads. Probably be doing this a couple times a week. And I hope this peek into my sound design process is at the very least interesting.